This week on Cherry Pickin', we're back, and we've got 1 week to build the ultimate highboy 4x4 F250 for the Diff Duncan Jamboree. Can we make it? Stay tuned to find out. This one's a doozy. Welcome back to this week's video, where we're working, finally, part 1, or 2, if you want to call this part 2, of cheapest highboy in America build. That's right, today we're working on my 67, oh, there's a dog behind me. We're working on my 67 F250 that we are converting with a frame swap to a highboy, a 4x4. Now, I have this correct 76 Ford F250 highboy frame, and being that it's a 76, technically the 67 body, cab, box will bolt onto this thing, with the exception of a 2-inch gap right between the cab and the box, which personally I think looks terrible. But we're gonna fix it. And because I got this frame for merely $300 with axles, transfer case, and leaf springs included, can't really complain about having to do more work to it, if you know what I'm saying. When frames everywhere are going for $1,500 to $3,000 right now, even for bare frames. And no, it's not exactly ideal. I'd love to have a 67 to 72 frame that I could just bolt right on, and I would have to do a lot less work to it. But here we are. So in today's video, I'm gonna show you how we're going to fix that 2-inch box to cab problem by drilling out all of the holes in all of the spring perches, shock mounts, basically everything that holds the rear axle in, and shifting it forward 2 inches, because that is the wheelbase difference between a 67 to 72 and then a 73 through 77 and a half highboy frame. It's just 2 inches, but they added the 2 inches in between the box and the cab. And so all you have to do is just move all your spring perches and your frame brackets that are related to your spring perches and axle forward just 2 inches, because it's 131 wheelbase for a 67 to 72, and it's 133 for 73 to 77 and a half. And because there doesn't seem to be a whole ton of information on actually how to do the swap, other than people telling you just take out the rivets, move it forward, and drill new holes, yeah, sure, if it were that simple. The problem is how to get the rivets out. Now, most people will actually tell you to use an air hammer with a chisel end. That seems to be the preferred method for a lot of people, and that does work. But few cons to that. It takes a lot of time. It's extremely loud, so if you're not doing it in a shop or if you're doing it at your home, you might upset some people. And the last and probably biggest problem is that when you actually cut the heads off these rivets with an air chisel just by themselves blindly, what you're actually doing is squishing that rivet, because these are not hardened steel rivets. These are completely soft metal rivets, and you're actually squishing and deforming the rivet inside the bolt holes that are there, and basically spreading it out to one way or another, and effectively making it just a little bit harder to get those rivets out, which is fine. It just means that it takes just a little bit more time, and it takes a lot of noise, a lot of patience, and a lot of vibration to your hands and arms, which really we don't need to do. So I'm going to show you the way that I figured out how to do it, and by figured out, I mean I was told by someone else that I should do it like this, and then I did it and realized, hey, if you got the bits for it, this is way easier. Basically, what we're going to do is take a series of drill bits, stepping it up a few times, to cut the head off the rivet, and then drill slightly into the rivet, and then punch it out with an air hammer. But you don't need to use a air hammer to chop the head off. Honestly, if you got some really sharp drill bits, or you got a whole bucket of them on hand like I do, you can do this. Now, I have to do a lot more than the average person when you do this swap, because I have extra brackets, and let me show you those. So, we're here at the back of my frame where I've already got some work done. I had to test this out in the past few days and this morning, just to make sure I was doing it the most efficient, quickest, and quietest way possible. Because I've got neighbors right next door, and I really don't want to bother them for about a day and a half cutting all these rivets off with an air hammer. But if you have a standard 73 to 77 and a half highboy frame, and you need to move your spring perches because you don't want to have that 2-inch gap between the box and the bed, you don't need to drill out as many as I have to. I have to do, I think I counted 38 total, and that's a lot. That's actually a lot. But the reason I have to do 38 is because for some reason, thankfully I guess it's not a bad thing, my truck came with overloader springs from the factory. It came with heavy-duty rear springs, so I've got these extra frame brackets on each side that are for the overloader springs. On a standard chassis, you don't necessarily need to do all this, but each one of these has 4 rivets on their own. So if you count them, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 16 more rivets right there. Now, if you were doing this without all that, theoretically, you only need to do this with 16 plus 6 more for the shock mounts. Now you don't have to move the shock mounts. I'm going to, because these were designed with the angle in mind. So I'm gonna go ahead and move my shock mounts because 2 inches is, you know, significant, some would say. Above average even. So in a normal instance, you'd have 24 of them to do. I have 38 to do. Now I was planning on moving the bump stop until I realized the bump stop is a lot more complicated than it seems. So the bump stop will be staying, which is good because that's less for me to drill out. Now in the process of me working on this frame and fixing it and doing all of this, there are some other alternatives you can do if you're doing this swap yourself. You don't have to drill out all of these. This is technically the right way to do it if you want to fix the cab to box distance, but you can just bolt them on exactly on this frame as they are. You'll just have a 2-inch gap. Or one thing you can do, which a lot of people do, is they split the 2-inch difference by 1 inch by moving the bed of the truck 1 inch forward and drilling new holes, and that places the rear wheel only an inch back in the wheel well, which is negligible, and leaves you with only a 1 inch wider gap at the box to cab, which is also somewhat negligible from certain angles. Now, I personally really don't like that look, so we're closing it up, and that's why I've got to do all this. So, well, there's nothing to do but to do it. Now, the way that I figured out the best way to do this is, that was a weird way of saying that. The best way to figure out, it doesn't matter. Initially, I was going to use a grinder and grind all the heads of these rivets flat. And I realized I don't really need to do that, because no matter what, my bits are going to drift a little bit, because this is really soft metal, and so I'm noticing there's a lot of drift happening regardless. So what I did instead is I took a plain old center punch like this. Don't mind the air compressor going, it's going to go all day. Took a center punch like this, found where I think the center of the rivet is, just kind of eyeballing it, punching it, and then I've been starting it with this bit, which actually I don't even know. These are 5/32. It's actually probably too big to start with, but oh, there's a lizard on the wall. Too big to start with, but it works for me because I got a whole jar of them, and a lot of these are brand new. Now, if you get lucky enough like me to have a father who hoards tools, then makes this really easy. Once you drill that 5/32 hole or whatever size you want, I basically drilled all the way till what I think is in line with the bracket and the frame. So basically you're drilling all the way through the bracket portion of the rivet. And then the next easiest thing is stepping it up to a 7/16 bit to finish cutting the head off the rivet. Now this will basically cut almost all of the head off of the rivet because the actual rivet size is 7/16. It's actually just a hair larger, but it's basically 7/16. So this, if you will just get to the edge of where the rivet head is mushroomed over on the bracket, this will cut the head off either almost completely or completely. And then, let's see if I can find it, whatever's left over, I just took a hammer and a plain chisel, metal chisel, and chopped the rest of the head off. Now, you're not done yet. Now, that seems like a lot, but all in all, that entire process takes me about a minute and a half. It's really quick, especially if you have 2 drills going. You can do it really fast, as long as you have really sharp bits, which I do. So it's making it really easy. But like I said, these aren't hardened steel rivets, so they are pretty easy to drill through. Now, after that, your final thing that honestly you don't have to do, but this made it easier for me, I noticed, is I go back in with a 5/16 bit, I repunch right in the center of where I drilled out, and drill out just a little bit more with a 5/16. At that point, the walls of the rivet are so thin that the whole thing can actually compress inwards a little bit, which helps you relieve some pressure. Now, you could just punch it out with a hammer, and I already did that on one of these, or this is the point where you can use an air hammer because it takes 0.2 seconds to pop it out once you did that. And I have this one with this bit that's destroyed, but it's perfect because it fits right inside a 5/16 hole. So that's the whole process. It's a long explanation on how to do this, but I've noticed that there is no videos on this anywhere other than some people just saying use an air hammer with an air chisel. The problem with that is those chisel blades for air hammers aren't exactly hardened steel, or if they are, they don't last very long. And this is actually one that has been virtually destroyed, and what you have to do is regrind them every few minutes or so, because you're destroying it every time you cut the head off of a rivet, because you're cutting through 7/16 of metal, versus just chiseling off just the slightest bit around the edges. Makes it a lot easier. You can do it that way. That's totally fine. Plenty of people have done it. A lot of people have done it. I just don't think that's the way that maybe works for a lot of people, especially if you don't have an air hammer. You can do this with just drill bits and a hammer and a punch. Now, I would get yourself a nice punch to do this with. This is a really nice old, this is an old one. I think this is a Proto. Yeah, this is a 9/6, no, this is a 1/2 inch Proto punch. This one works really well because it's a good size, good distance, so I'm not hitting my hands, and it works fine. And I use this on one of them. So let's get to it. I've got 30, I've already done 2, and I've drilled 3 others. So I don't know what the math is on that, but I definitely have 36 more total that I have to punch out. Now you also want to be careful when doing this, because once you start punching all these out, your frame brackets are just going to fall off. Now obviously there's some that aren't going to work well. I'm actually going to get to a point where I actually have to take off my leaf springs, because that one is basically blocked by the frame bracket, and the one on the other side's blocked. That one is blocked by the leaf spring. The one that's on the frame bracket in the back, there's one that's kind of blocked off, which on the other side on this side somebody put a bolt, thankfully. Other side, it's not so easy. But I could do it from the inside of the frame if I really wanted to. We'll see. It's kind of a doing it by eye type of situation. Anyways, let's stop talking. Let's throw up the time lapse, and let me get all these rivets punched out so we can move forward to drilling all the new holes afterwards, moving everything 2 inches forward. And then we can, like, you know, potentially put on a body. Actually, first I'm going to paint it, because while everything's off here, we're going to paint it. And then we're going to put the motor and trans on, actually, because I need to set that first before the body comes on. It's a lot of stuff to do. Let's get to it. Alright, it's been a little bit of time, and I tell you what, it's probably not smart to do this on the first hot day of the year. It's sitting about 90 degrees right now, and you're really feeling it in your bones and on your skin, and I don't have an easy up, so it's about 3 o'clock now. I started this at probably 10:30 or so, and took quite a bit of a break for lunch, and I took a break earlier when it was just hot and I had to let my drills cool down. And well, we've got basically all of them off. Really didn't take that long. I mean, I would say it probably took longer on the second side, mostly because my drill bit was starting to wear out and I didn't change it out soon enough. But, you know, what are you going to do? So it took me a little bit longer to do the other side, just because my starting pilot drill bit just really was wearing down pretty quickly, and I was too lazy to walk over here to change it. So, you know, only went through one bit, I would say, and honestly that bit's still good. It's just not as sharp as it was, so can't complain about that. Both my 5/16 and 7/16 bits are just fine. And I will say that is absolutely the way to do it, because even though I had 38 of these to do, and you won't have that many, you'll have 24, which is a lot better than 38. That was way faster. I did one side in 45 minutes total, from start to finish, even on camera, talking, taking my time. Camera dad. Like I said, folks, it's real hot out here right now. But anyways, like I was saying, if you have the materials to do this, if you have the drills, I would recommend not using a cordless drill for the entire thing. I did burn up my Ryobi a little bit. Started smoking near the end there. I had like one left, and it just was smoking up. But I was actually using a old corded DeWalt drill for like majority of it. I just had the Ryobi as a secondary, so I didn't have to switch back and forth. And for some reason, the 7/16 bit didn't fit in the DeWalt, so couldn't switch out to that. But that went by way faster than I expected it to. It's, like I said, it's 3 o'clock. I started at 10, and I took like basically at least 2 hours worth of breaks. So you do the math. But and I took my time with it. I really wasn't trying to go fast. So, I don't know. I'd say that's a plus. If you're thinking about doing it this way, I would recommend it. If you don't want to, well, You don't have to, you know. It's a free world. Actually, no, it's not. It's a free country. If you're watching this in America. If you're watching it somewhere else, that's your problem. But I'm at the point where I actually can't finish taking off the spring brackets. Each one has like one rivet still holding it in, because I actually need to jack this thing up, put it on some jack stands, unbolt the leaf packs, unbolt the drive shaft, because I still have a rear drive shaft in this thing, and then take the axle out from underneath the frame, which is going to be a lot of fun here in the gravel. And this is actually the part that I'm looking forward to the least, because, well, it's hot and I'm on gravel. So, and unfortunately, the 66 Country Sand is still taking up space in my garage, so I can't even like move this thing into the garage to work on it in there, as much as I would love being in some shade right now. Anyways, yeah, let's unbolt. I gotta unbolt the axle. I'm probably gonna unbolt the axle by itself first, because it's gotta come off the U-bolts anyways. I'm not gonna leave the leaf springs on it. And then I'll unbolt the leaf packs, keep this thing on some jack stands, take out those last brackets, and then we get to drill 38 new holes, 2 inches forward. How hard can it be? All right, it's been a few days. It's actually been about a week since I've started on this frame. So I need to catch up with you and myself, even though for you it's only been a second. But basically, what we went ahead and got done, I actually drilled every single hole in the frame, which you can see by the just hundreds of holes at this point. So all of our old holes are 2 inches further back, and all of our new holes are 2 inches further forward, as you can see. And that is for everything. Now, your frame when you do this may not look like this, because I do have the overloader springs that, unfortunately, I am keeping, because I do tow with this vehicle, so it would be nice to have the extra spring rate. But that means that some of them, like this one, run right next to where the old hole is. Now, that's not a huge deal, because it's on the upper side of the hole. So 3 other holes will locate it, and then 1 will have a little bit of meat not left, but I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to affect anything. But we've got all of our holes drilled, except for there's 3 on that side where the frame seems really hard. I have to finish those up. We went ahead and got our axle off. It's unbolted. It actually unbolted super easy, and our springs came out super easy, which was really nice. But what we're looking at now is I have been working on for the past few days. Let me take this steering shaft out that is not the right size. But I am changing the engine pedestals, because in order for this 460 to fit somewhat correctly, you cannot run the stock 390 and or 360 FE style pedestals. And unfortunately, whoever owned this truck previously welded them onto the frame and then plug welded all of the holes. And so I spent about an hour and a half getting that one off, and I've got about an hour and 20 minutes on this one that's almost gone but not done. And as you can see, it is ruined, basically. And it's unfortunate, because these are actually worth money, and I'm not going to be able to recoup any of it, because these are trashed completely. So if we come over here and compare the 2 frame brackets, these are both for the same side. As you can tell, the 360 FE one is significantly taller and sticks further out. This is for a 351M/400 motor from a later 70s, 78, 79 truck, like a lowboy. But these allow you to bolt the 460 onto these frames in somewhat the right location. Now, what I'm doing is a little bit of almost experimenting, because even though a lot of this has been done before, there doesn't seem to be a lot of documentation on whether or not this all fits perfectly or if it has to be modified. However, what I can tell you, this frame bracket does not bolt directly up to this frame. The frame is completely different, the holes are completely different. You have to drill new holes, which, not a huge deal, but you have to drill new holes. You can actually tell these have kind of a lean to it that all of those bolt holes don't line up with. So what I'm gonna do is bolt up the motor mounts to the 460, which we'll go over, attach those to the motor mounts on the 460, attach the transmission, the ZF5, which we'll show you, as well as the crossmember, which I actually had to go steal a crossmember because the 4-wheel drive and F350 crossmembers are different than F250's 2-wheel drives and F100s. The F250 2-wheel drives sit on the bottom of the frame rail and run completely flat. The highboys and the F350s, for some reason, just the way the frames are designed, they have this raised bracket, and then it sits on that bracket and dips down, which on highboys clears the drive shaft that comes from the transfer case on the driver's side. Now, I did some measuring, and we actually have the ZF5 I will be using right here. This is the ZF5 we'll be using. This is an S542 ZF5, so it's an earlier, not rated for as much torque. Wow, it's really bright. But as you can see, big block Ford. This came out of a 460 truck, an early 80s 460 truck, I believe. And you've got the ZF Ford tag right there. But after doing some measuring, I've noticed that from the front end of this bell housing to the trans mount at the back of the transmission seems to line up almost exactly to the MP435 distance from the front of the bell housing to the back of the crossmember mount. And the old trans mount off of a C6 also measures to be, I believe, the correct size to line up with the mount on this one. I believe it's 5.5 inches. I might have to remeasure that, but it looked like it was about 5.5 inches, which this one is also 5.5 inches from end to end. So theoretically, if the 460 bolts in the correct place, this transmission should bolt onto the motor, bolt onto the isolator mount for the trans cross member, and then the whole thing should fit basically perfectly. We might have to adjust that frame mount. We might actually have to move the transmission cross member slightly back or slightly forward. Not entirely sure yet. It does have a little bit of movement when you flip it around, so you can actually change the positioning of it just ever so slightly. And on the actual frame brackets, you have a manual transmission and an automatic bolt spacing. And if you really wanted to, you could probably just drill some more even and fit it even more. But if you look at this cross member, you'll notice that it has a wider depth in the back here and a shorter depth in the front, which means if you turn this whole thing around, you'll gain some extra room, and these are slotted. So there's actually quite a bit of movement in this thing. If I absolutely need to, I will cut the rivets off of these and scoot them back or forward as needed, just like I did with my rear leaf spring purchase. But the end of the story is you need the 351-400 motor mounts to bolt the 462. And then you also need these, which are the motor mounts that bolt to the purchase. These are from L&L. They are the company that makes these. These are to convert the 460 to the 351-400M 4x4 engine pedestals. So you need these adapter motor mounts, which I did not know. And I actually had to steal these from my dad's Super Cab, which you'll see in the next video. But those, alongside with the motor mount purchase, as well as a 4x4 oil pan, will help bolt this 460, hopefully, perfectly underneath the hood of this truck when it's all said and done. Now, like I said, there's a lot of ifs, ands, and maybes on this project, and even though this has been done multiple times, everyone has done it slightly differently. A lot of people tell you have to cut or modify the firewall, or that you have to cut or modify frame mounts, or you have to cut or modify transmission mounts, everything. The problem is that everyone does it just slightly different, and nobody has really documented every single step of the way, including the biggest thing, these motor mount purchase. Because what a lot of people that I think are doing are using the 360-390 motor mount purchase with the adapter motor mounts, which, no matter what, will raise the motor up really high, which then leads to a problem that people have where the top of the transmission ends up running into the firewall and hugs the bottom of the transmission tunnel. And the problem is nobody has explained whether or not they're using the correct purchase, and so their problems may just be because they're not using the right motor mount purchase, which drop the whole motor 2 to 3 inches. And a lot of times that's the issue that people have, is that it runs into the firewall, it's too high, blah 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 blah. So hopefully I will be able to document it here for you in the next video on how this whole motor fits. For now, we're going to finish getting this thing cut off, then we have to clean, scrape, wire wheel the entire frame. Hey, I'm talking here. And then the plan is to paint this whole frame, which I don't have a lot of room, but I want to paint it black because it's like 7 different colors right now. So let's get this off and let's paint the whole thing. And then we can finally bolt our axles back on so that this thing can be a roller again. All right, so I've got the frame horn off finally. It's over there. Actually, no, it's inside. It's in better shape than the other one. And I went ahead and ground down all of the welds pretty much to the best of my ability. I'm not going to go super crazy. I got to clean that one up. I don't even know what that hole is for. blocked up on that side, or not there. But everything is pretty much cleaned up from the garbage that was here before. So now, I was originally going to take this axle off, although I don't think I'm going to anymore, because it means at minimum I got to take the leaf springs loose and drop the pitman arm, or yeah, remove the tie rod end of the pitman arm off the axle to roll it out. I think what I'm going to end up doing, oh yeah, don't mind the noise by the way, I had a pipe explode in my slab right underneath my kitchen sink, and so my father is currently jackhammering underneath the slab in order for us to actually fix the pipe. So, you know, the timing couldn't be better. But basically what I think I'm going to do is I'm probably going to end up just leaving this axle. I'm not sure. I really wanted to strip everything off this frame so I could clean it all with a wire wheel and paint it all. But I'm running out of time. It's actually currently Thursday. Jamboree is next Friday. Well, technically Saturday, but we go out on Friday. So I have exactly 1 week to get this frame together, and I want to paint it. I want to paint both the front and rear axles, paint the leaf springs, and then slap it all back together. And I still have to get the motor and trans cleaned up and set in here to figure out where everything's going to be. And I still need drive shafts. I still need a lot of stuff. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. We're just going to get to cleaning and, I guess, painting this thing. So let's do it. Okay, it's the next morning, and it is officially 1 exact week until Jamboree. And our truck looks like this. Yesterday I went ahead and wire wheeled the entire frame, spent probably 30 or 40 minutes cleaning it up. I'm going to basically spray this entire frame, and the plan for today is to get this entire frame painted, get all of the accessories painted, like all the spring brackets, probably the leaf springs, at least the rears, and then anything else that's not painted black, we're going to paint black so that we can then assemble this thing, put it back together, put all the leaf spring brackets and everything back on it, and then finally put the axle back under it so that we can roll this thing out and start working on the motor and trans, which need to happen so that the cab and bed can go on it. Now, I'm not going to primer any of this frame. I did primer the bare metal spots that we cut our old engine pedestals off of because they were bare metal, and I cleaned them up, and they're not perfect. You can definitely see kind of where the witness line of where the brackets were. This side's a little bit better, but went ahead and primered that yesterday so that it could at least, you know, cover the bare metal. But this morning, it's pretty early morning. It's actually like perfect temperature. It's not cold, but it's not warm yet. And currently this thing is in the shade. So what we're gonna do is wipe this whole thing down with acetone as best as we can. Now, obviously this thing is not a show quality job. This is simply to get this thing one color and to seal it up, because currently it's about 7 different colors between the old undercoating and the paint POR15 that somebody else did, and then the primer, the old black paint, bare metal. Like, it's just a mix of stuff. So the plan is to get this thing coated in one nice even coat, probably do 2 or 3 coats actually, and we're also not using anything special to do it, just using some high performance Rust-Oleum. This is supposedly the better stuff. I don't even know if I've actually used this exact stuff, but I've got about 4 cans. I hope that's enough to do everything, including my leaf springs and my axles, but we'll see. So let's get to wiping and let's start painting. Okay, so that took like 25 minutes, pretty much. Not fun. My hands are already starting to hurt. That was 2 cans down. I only have 4. I have some other black, but I have 4 of the matching ones. Took 2 cans to do 1 whole coat on the frame, which is kind of a slightly wet coat, but also slightly weak in some places. I definitely didn't go underneath with it almost at all. So I'll probably do that on one of the next ones. But now it's time to let it flash for a few minutes, and then we'll throw some more coats on it, and we will be back when we are painting everything else and then assembling it. So see you in a sec. Okay, unfortunately the wind is picking up a lot, so I apologize for the audio quality if it's really bad. But this morning, went ahead and painted all of our brackets, including our engine pedestals. I cleaned them up. Now, I did not do a really good job cleaning these up. I'm gonna admit they were very lightly wire wheeled and then sprayed, and I'm not gonna say it was a good job, but they're not rusty colored anymore. They're at least black. I'm over here working on part 2 for next week, which you'll see, which is engine and transmission stuff. But I gotta come show you this real fast. So here's our frame painted, nice and painted. It's already dusty, it's been a day, and it's really dusty. But something I need to show you, if you do this swap where you move these brackets forward, you'll see that this is our original bracket holes where the rivets were. You can actually see where the undercoating didn't touch it, and then our new holes that are 2 inches forward. However, this bolt right here may run into the cross member alignment on this cross member right behind the transfer case. And what that causes, because there's a support bracket in there, which you may or may not be able to see, is this guy right here. I actually had to cut the hump out of this support bracket. There's a hump right in the middle, and it ran right into where this nut needs to go. So I cut it back just a little bit with a Sawzall. I was actually able to do it with this little 6-inch one, which was surprising. But cut it back and then air hammered it off. And now, see that in there, I don't know if you can see it. Now that nut has about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. Actually, it's got more like, yeah, 1/8 of an inch. It's really hard to see. It's got 1/8 of an inch that it can sit. And these bolts are just barely long enough for those brackets. So the head of the, or the tip of the bolt will not stick into the support bracket, but I gotta cut the other side, and then we can finally bolt the spring perches and all the brackets back on here and get our springs back on, which I'm not gonna paint off the truck because I'm running short on time. It is now officially less than a week before Jamboree, and there are so many things to figure out. So we're just gonna go ahead and slap these on. I may roughly wire wheel them when they're on the truck and then just throw paint while they're on the truck. Let's bolt all these pieces on and roll this frame out. Okay, well, yesterday turned out to be super hectic and super windy, which meant that I could not really record very much. But we went ahead, and this thing is completely painted. I think I already mentioned that. And I got all of my brackets bolted on. Now I need 2 more have to be tightened. I didn't have the right wrench to reach on the backside. But I mentioned that when you do this on the later 73 through later frame that has the extra 2 inches for the wheelbase, the support bracket that's underneath this cross member may run into where your bolt head goes when you move the bracket forward on the lower front spring hanger. So I notched mine. I just cut it with a Sawzall and then air hammered what was left of it out. I only took about 1/4 of an inch out of it. It's not going to affect anything really. But I had to do that to make sure it was clear. But everything is bolted now, other than I just got to tighten those 2 bolts like I said, and I'm going to do that, and then we're throwing our leaf springs back on. And then we're going to throw the axle back on, and then this whole thing will get rolled out so we can see it in all its glory. In, theoretically, it's gonna be fun. All right, there it is, first leaf spring on. Let's wire wheel it and paint it. All right, one painted, and you know, maybe I'll throw a second kit on there, who knows? Might go crazy, but let's get the other side on and roll this thing out. Well, after fighting with leaf springs, cleaning them off, wire wheeling them, I did go ahead and paint them, and yeah, I'm glad I did that. They do definitely look better. Unfortunately, I've got to get this axle back on. You can't probably see, but I got a nice new hole in my pants here, and it looks like a pretty good cut underneath, because unfortunately this frame, I have it balancing on a 2 foot long 4x4 in the center that's really not attached very well, and it slipped, fell over, knocked over one of my springs right on the fresh paint into the dirt. So, you know, just sprayed over that, and I actually decided I couldn't live with myself with the rear springs being so nice and shiny and black, and so I painted the front springs too. But don't worry, I didn't prep them at all. I just right over the dirt. So that's fine. Anyways, now that everything's back on it, we've got our overloader springs set in place, I got to get this axle back under this thing before it's dangerous. So let's roll it back under and put the U-bolts back on, and then we'll have a rolling chassis again. I forgot I discovered something. It's pretty cool. I'll show you in a sec.
Get it in place and then flip it over towards you. Yeah.
Remember, really slow. This one, once it starts going, goes.
Yours needs to come forward ever so slightly. Dang it. Now we need a screw.
Well, axle's back under. Let's roll this out. All right, this is the first time this frame has come out of here since we put it in here almost 4 months ago. So there it is. I'm gonna need help to get the rest of the way out. This gravel's making it too hard and I'm too weak. So, do we want to turn harder or?
Not yet.
Okay.
The rear wheel will.
All right. Ready?
Now we gotta turn it. Now the question is how.
Oh, whoa. It's only a day old.
Not over the wheel.
Now that I could care less about.
Okay, other way.
All right, watch.
Watch that back tire over there.
Oh, we're clear. All right, now turn.
Nope.
Oh. Which one?
We're going like this.
Oh, okay.
And then you can pull these back up onto this.
Sure, that's not a bad idea. All right, frame's moved. We've got a rolling chassis again, folks. Well, folks, we done did it. We done took a darn old 4x4 frame from an F250, a 76 F250, and we drilled all of our leaf spring perches, brackets, everything we needed 2 inches forward in order to fit the 67 through 72 bump side bed. Now, if you're doing this at home, I have a few suggestions. First of all, don't use an air hammer with a chisel tip to take all your rivets out. It's a lot of work, folks. A lot of work. Drill them out first. Start with like a 5/32 bit, move up to a 5/16, and then finally a 7/16. In total, I would say it took me about 2 hours to drill every single rivet out. And then it took me about 5 minutes to chop all the heads off and pop them out. And they all popped out, no problem. So I would say that that is absolutely the way you should do it. Now, you don't have to, I'm not telling you what to do, but that worked for me. And I had a bunch of bits to choose from, but I'll tell you what, I only used 2 small 5/32 bits when I bent one, and I only used one 5/16 and one 7/16 drill bit for the entire thing. And not only that, I had to go back and re-drill a few of the perches because their holes were just slightly off on about 4 or 5 of them. And so I bolted them up, drilled through them with a 7/16 bit with no oil, and that bit's still going strong. So I would say that that's the way to do it if you're going to do it. Now, I obviously still have to put the bed on this thing, but that won't be till about part 3 in this video series of building the cheapest highboy. But I can assure you it's going to be basically the same thing. We're going to set the bed on. I'm going to measure from the end of the cab to the edge of the bed, make sure I have the right amount, and then we're going to set the bed on where it belongs after the cab is bolted on, line it up, mark it, take the bed back off, drill the holes. They should be exactly 2 inches farther forward from every other bed bolt. And I'll let you know in part 3 if we need to space it with some washers. You'll find out. But basically everything you need to know has been taken care of. I do apologize for the audio quality because the wind is a whipping right now. It is kicking. It's late afternoon in the high desert, and this is about the time that this is happening. Now don't go anywhere, because although we're done with this video, we're going to preview on next week's video where we take the motor and transmission that we're swapping into this beast and fit it on in here, make it fit. And I'm going to show you how to do it, or at least how I do it, next time on Cherry Picking. So if you like this video and you want to keep watching this series, please let me know by leaving me a comment. Like the video, it helps out. Hype it, because that helps for some reason, more than likes, I don't know. And if you want to see more like this and you want to finish the series out with me, please subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you that watches these videos. I know I've been very, very absent, I will say, for the past few months, posting only about a video every 2, 3, 4 weeks. Run into a lot of life as we all know it, so I apologize for that, but we are getting back on it. And at the time I'm recording this segment, it is currently Sunday, and by Thursday afternoon technically, Friday is really the day today, but Thursday afternoon I really need to have a running driving truck so that I can drive it 2.5 hours and spend a weekend off-roading and then drive it 2.5 hours back. So you're gonna see all that here, folks, whether I make it or not, because no matter what, this thing's getting built. So stay tuned. We'll see you next time.